Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 1st of March 2024. A new month begins, but with a lot of challenges. The first challenge, which is also going to be our first story, concerns economy and the economic challenges that the government has in store. And of course, the first and most paramount economic challenge is the relationship with the IMF. The SBA is ending, and we need to go for another mid-term program with the IMF. How important is that? How important are all the other reforms process that the caretaker government and the government before that had initiated, and the continuity of that? And how important is it also to work along with all the parties, including those in the opposition, to formulate a charter of economy so that all the important decisions are taken collectively with the consensus. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns India, and of course it's Prime Minister Narendra Modi that is going forward with a third stint in the elections that are going to be held in May this year. When you look at the whole authoritarian way in which Narendra Modi has led his government in the past two stints, there seems to be no change as far as that is concerned. But at what cost? This is what we are going to discuss in our second segment. Then we are going to discuss Iran's parliamentary elections that were held today, and the outcome of those elections will of course be coming in the next 3 days. So we will be discussing those as well, whether it be the 15,200 candidates which will run for the 290-seat parliament, or the assembly of experts which appoints and can dismiss the supreme leader. These are elections that have happened today, and of course we'll be sharing the results as and when they come along. Finally, a proposal to cool the earth down by blocking the sun has finally been withdrawn because of consequences that it could have on climate change and the environment. Whether it is a good decision or not, only time will tell. So this is what we are going to discuss today in our show. Our first main story is Pakistan's economic issues and how the new government needs to go forward. What are the challenges on the economic front that pertain to this current government, and of course IMF being on the top of that list. We've been joined by Dr. Khaqan Najeeb. He's a former advisor to the Finance Ministry. Dr. Khaqan, pleasure to have you on board for this very important segment, and I know you are one of the most apt persons to discuss economy. Our caretaker Finance Minister, Dr. Khaqan, Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, in a departure note, asked the new government to be prudent and reach immediately an agreement with the IMF. How much of a priority should this be?
So, Omar, reaching an agreement with the IMF is almost certainty. That's the way to move. The reason is that Pakistan needs $25 billion this year, most of which has been arranged. Rollovers are in process. Another $4-5 billion have to flow in. But the next 2 years are the same. Then our fiscal side is also on the weaker footing. Our energy side is also on the weaker footing. Without the IMF umbrella, given the international architecture, Pakistan would not be able to finance its external flows. Payments remains challenged. So that's a no-brainer. But I think that's just the beginning part. The actual part here to debate is what kind of program does one enter with the IMF. Here I keep saying this, and this is the most important sentence in today's conversation. It is not an IMF program. The program is a country program. So it is a program of Pakistan supported by an extended fund facility of the IMF. Omar, if you think about the program in that way, then it's not just deciding to go to the IMF, which everyone largely now agrees, all the main, policymakers, the stakeholders, but how do you design a program that's favorable? How do you design a program which actually targets the main fundamentals that are, broken in Pakistan? For example, it's a no-brainer to say that you want to have privatization, right? But that's not the only thing you want to do. You want to see that how can the economy become more productive and efficient by privatizing the SOEs, by dismantling the energy sector. So the thought process is, how do you design a program which does more than the usual, which we've been doing with the fund before? How do you define a program which is just not based on increasing GST or indirect taxation or the import duties or the RDs on imports, the regulatory duties, but you actually design a program which broadens the tax base in Pakistan? How do you design a program which doesn't just talk about austerity? All the IMF programs are austerity based, but not austerity by cutting, foreign visits and not having new cars to buy. But real austerity is Pakistan's expenditure reform on the PSDP, on the pensions, on the rising debt. Now, when I say rising debt expenditure, it's the markup I'm talking about. When I say the markup, then you start getting into external debt reprofiling. How does one think about external debt reprofiling when one approaches the IMF? When you think about the pension reforms, it is not that we are going to cut the pensions, but the pace on which they are increasing, how do you lower that pace? So when you think about these ideas, which are new ideas, which are deeper ideas, then you go to the fund when you've thought about the real sector, which is manufacturing, productivity, agriculture, when you've thought about the fiscal framework, not only in increasing the already taxes which are there, but documentation, when you think about digitization, when you think about automation, when you think about the fiscal side on the expenditure as we've discussed, on the energy, you go much beyond the pricing changes. This SBA on February 15th, we said we will increase the gas price. That should not be even a structural benchmark. That should be done automatically by OGRA and, admin by government. The deeper part is how do you dismantle the two SUI companies into smaller companies and, let them go off the radar of the government and have the private sector take over? How do you deregulate the petroleum sector where there is competition, margins are reduced? How do you actually, rethink the whole energy ballgame in the power sector where the growing circular debt is tackled by the fundamentals? The reason I'm putting all these points is you can have a run-of-the-mill IMF program that is largely a straitjacket program that you've had and not take ownership, or you can have an ownership of the program by rethinking, recalibrating your economy and having your own folks write that program. That's the hard part.
Dr. Khaqan, you talk about a program that needs to be driven by reforms and that needs to be for the benefit of the country. But time is of the essence, isn't it? We are already in March, the program is ending, and we need to go towards a new program and also assure the IMF that we are going on with the conditionalities that it had put forward for the SBA to end properly and us to get the last tranche as far as the SBA is concerned. When you look at the implementation of SOE policy for improved governance, financial performance, when you look at the public debt positioning and the Fiscal Responsibility and Debt Limitation Act that has been breached since 2013. When you look at the public debt liabilities that are hampered by weak tax collections, how can you remedy that when you know that time is ticking before we go to the IMF or the IMF comes to us for discussions?
So I think you've put some very, very important points, and especially on the timing as well. The first thing is that the IMF has to come back to us for the second or the last review of the current standby arrangement of about $1.1 billion. As the new government forms, I think they should invite the fund to come back. This is based on the December targets. They are largely met. I think one or two are not met, but that's okay. So they should review those, finish that by, let's say, 15th or 20th March, so that money comes in. By that time, I am hoping that some of the discussions that need to be happening with the IMF on the new fund facility should begin. But I know the time is of the essence, but maybe you can take still a month or two and first design this program locally. If we run into this program or rush it, just the intimation to the fund that we want to move, and we have had a preliminary discussion when they are here. That's one way to think about it. The other way is, of course, when they're here, you start a full-fledged negotiation with the fund. Now, that really depends how well prepared the authorities are at present. Do they have a picture of the macro, side? Do they have a picture of the energy side? Have they, a grip on the MEFP, the Memorandum of Economic and Financial Policies? I really doubt that we have that kind of a picture or that kind of a framework in our bag where we can, put something to the IMF. Then I think they have to put together a team. And I say this with all sincerity. If you have 11 folks from the IMF who are all the sector specialists and PhDs, you need to put together a similar team from our side in each sector who are, dispassionately involved with doing the fund work. That's how we did the 2013-16 largely. We had folks who were,
the only program that we managed to finish, Dr. Khaqan, and that we need to add as well, apart from the SBA that inshallah will also finish, but the only program of so many programs that we have been not been able to finish was the 2013-2016 because of proper management. Speaking of that, GDP growth has accelerated to 2.1% in the first quarter of the current fiscal year. In the past 6 months to tackle challenges, the unproductive expenditures have been reduced, coupled with a boost to tax and non-tax income, which includes unpopular measures such as reduction in the subsidy bill on power and gas, and we have all been, victims of that through timely implementation of quarterly tariffs. No supplementary grants have been issued. PSDP projects of provincial domain have been transferred to the provincial annual development plans. Do you feel these are good measures? Do you feel that despite the public outcry, we need to have a continuity of these measures because in the long run, the economic stability is paramount to Pakistan, or do you feel we need more changes?
So in the short run, these are fair points, and macro stability can be seen. The gyration in the rupee-dollar parity has stabilized. Inflation, when you look at the Fed numbers, what you can see is clearly that there is a effect of the tightening of the monetary policy. It has helped. Inflation is now down to 23%. This is the latest number, which has just come out about a couple of hours ago. So inflation is now down to nearly 23%. Core inflation is below 20%. So a rate cut in the future is now looking more and more appropriate. So that's good news. On the PSDP, I think a lot of work needs to be done. Yes, going to the provinces of the projects that should be done that are provincial subjects, but also pruning the big throw forward that we have in trillions of rupees so that we can have some completion in the coming years, and then rethinking PSDP more on the lines of the software development rather than just hardware. So that would become important. And jacking up PSDP as we move forward, because in terms of the what you call percentage of GDP, over the last many years, PSDP has really come down from 4%. The country's overall development programs have come down from nearly being 4% to I think about 2% of GDP. So that has to be thought. In the new work that we need to do, we need to start thinking how what you have said. We've jacked up the pricing on both the gas as well as on the power sector, passed through the FPA, the quarterly as well as the base adjustments. This has had a very heavy effect on manufacturing, but then also on our agriculture as well as on the vulnerable segments of the society, where a country with 40% poverty, when you look at the World Bank matrix, when you look at other markers like stunting, which means malnutrition, children have not had enough to eat till the age of 5, so their heights are much lower than what median comparison to the world is. When you look at those markers, such raising of the prices affects these people the most. So your income support program, which is a targeted subsidy, needs to be seriously jacked up as we head to the next year. It's about 466 billion this year. I hope we can pay that off. That's to 10 million households. I think we need to go beyond the 10 million households, as well as jacking up the 466 to nearly 800 billion rupees by doing the proper taxation in the areas which are undertaxed. Now, these are serious reform agendas that we are talking about. The reason we are talking about this is that the new government wants to, sound relief to the people of Pakistan. And this income support is probably the direct and the best relief. Then there are new ideas, and that's why I keep saying, think through new ideas. Here's the new idea for the incoming government. I was just reading the research on Pakistan, and they say that whereas income support helps, buying assets putting, for example, 100 billion rupees on the side and saying we want to buy a cow for a family and, let them, sell that milk or giving them an asset, not only in terms of, cheap credit, but maybe just giving it to them can put them into productive work, productive employment, or buying them a bicycle on which they can sell, shoes or whatever is needed in the area where they live. Start thinking very differently. And so beyond the income support, go with wealth or asset support to them. So these are the ideas you go to the fund with. When you do that kind of work, not only do you handle the relief part, but you handle targeted relief with the fund, and they would be happy too. And in the end, you must realize that your energy sector will hamper your progress in the coming years if you don't do a surgical treatment of selling the discos, the tariff reform, the targeted subsidy reform, the IPPs. You need to go back to them. You need to renegotiate their debts with us. The much deeper work is required. Take this to be the most serious divestment effort in Pakistan's history. If you do all the work that we've just talked about, Omar, a homegrown plan and a homegrown work, the IMF would be happy. Pakistan's external debtors would be happy. They would fund us more, and the kind of monies needed, which I call, we need to recycle the multilateral debt, which means we return to them, let's say $3.5 billion next year. We must pick up $5 billion in long-term financing. Pakistan would start to look different if we do all this.
I hope that we manage to at least a huge chunk of what you've just said, because these are huge tasks. One of those is the FBR reforms. Shamshad Sahaba did manage to begin those reforms, structural reforms, division of the FBR, so that it could become more competent. How important is A, those reforms in the FBR sector? B, how important is increasing the tax net? We have talked so much about it, but how important now in this day and age, when we have to go to the IMF and we need to stand on our own feet at the same time, and we need to apply reforms that will benefit us in the long term? How important are these reforms as well to include everybody in the tax net, from the biggest pay scale to the one who can afford it?
So, Omar, you couldn't have put it better. One thing we have to remember is that it's easy to say that our tax to GDP ratio is hovering around 9% of the FBR tax to GDP ratio for the last 1 decade. So we haven't been able to make a large dent in terms of increasing the tax in Pakistan in terms of the GDP. That's not a good sign. But number two, the more important thing is that we move forward not only at the federal level, we move forward on the provincial level also. If, agriculture income tax is a provincial subject, a collection of 4 billion rupees when the agriculture is 22% of GDP, that's, not acceptable. Immovable property, registration, car, other property work, and then the real estate taxation. So all these are areas which are undertaxed. On the federal side, when we come to retailers and wholesalers, highly undertaxed. But what we have to start now thinking with the IMF is also that the quality of taxation going from indirect to direct would become very, very important. Ensuring fairness and equity in the system would become very, very important. Easing the taxation paying regime would become very, very important. Digitizing, automating, and then doing strict data analysis would become very, very important. Where bifurcation of customs and, the IRS is one way to move forward. Here's my very simple thing. The next incoming government announces a chairperson of, whether it's IRS or customs or whether they are still together for the next 3 years. That's the first step to move, Omar. If you don't have a person behind the gun may be the best you have. Still, it's the person which is going. If you change 6 FPR people in 4 to 5 years, no one's going to have the vision and the implementation plan or the framework that you want to decide with him or her. So start thinking differently. Tell the IMF that this is a serious human resiliency word that appeared. We keep talking about this capacity building. Simple capacity building is the CEO then picks up a team, the second tier team, and then moves with the kind of reforms that we policymakers, the National Assembly, the Parliament, then decides with them. So start thinking of new ideas. It's there are several ideas lying around. It's not only the implementation bit but we've to start thinking differently from the ideas that we've done. If we've changed 6 people in the last 6 years, let's move and think differently and have one person for the next 3 years at least. And if he or she performs, maybe we can have him or her for the next 3 years as well. But that's the kind of idea we must go with to the IMF. The Australian Tax Office has appointed a person worldwide pick up and a 6 to 7 year appointment. Now, if they can do that, I'm sure we can also think like that.
Dr. Khaqan, last question I'd like to ask, and I'd like a concise answer because we're a bit short of time for this segment. We have a new government, we have an opposition that might or might not want to work with the government. Now, the fact is that the economy is one of our top priorities. How important it is for all political parties, whether they are in the treasury or bench or in the opposition, to sit down together and to be on one page and have a consensus on important issues such as economy. Because you talk of all these reforms, how can we pass them if there's not a consensus? Charter of economy, is this the most important thing now for both the opposition and the government to work on?
So every political party must look at the mandate that the people of Pakistan have given in this election. On 8th of February, people of Pakistan spoke and said that we are going to vote all the major political parties into the government with different kind of voting pattern. And we may have a disagreement here or there, but all of them are there. So one thing is they want all of them to work and probably work together. The opposition has its role of keeping an eye on the government, but right now the government's role is to do what you just said, have a consolidated document, the framework, the contours of that IMF program with them, go to all the stakeholders, the military and civil bureaucracy, as well as the political parties, they are with the government, and the ones which are not, so that everyone broadly understands how you move forward. Here's the last thing. There is democracy at the top, there is civil and military bureaucracy on the left of the triangle that I always make these days. There is a right of the triangle which is called the technocracy. That technocracy that tell them to do this job for you. And I don't mean only people of economics profession. You need sectoral experts in power, gas, petroleum, investment, privatization, all kinds of areas. That part will give you the kind of research framework which will give sanctity to a program that you take to your people, to your parliament, to your establishment, and then to the IMF.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan, Najeeb, to have joined us. You have talked so ably on our economic challenges and what we need to do in order to stabilize Pakistan for the next, not only couple of months, but the next couple of years. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. That was Dr. Khaqan, Najeeb, former advisor to the Finance Ministry and an economic expert, talking to us about Pakistan's economic challenges. Our second segment concerns the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. Since 2014, Narendra Modi has been in the government, and the third elections in which he might or might not come back into power are going to be held in May this year. The fact is that during his tenure, there are different things that have worked in the benefit of Narendra Modi, and he has planned his whole leadership in such a way that people only look up to him as the savior. And not only that, he has completely changed the outlook of India, but not for the better. The whole pluralism aspect or the democracy aspect of the country is nowhere to be seen now, with the fascist and mostly Hindu totalitarianism dominating what we now see in India. That and more is going to be discussed in our second segment, and our guest is in the studio, Barrister Needa Salam. She's a foreign affairs expert. Barrister Saiba, thank you very much to have joined us. Barrister Saiba, when you look at India, the future kind of doesn't look as rosy as it is being projected by the BJP and Narendra Modi. his government, his people around him have actively worked to intensify conflicts on the lines of religion, on the lines of region, and this is going to further stray the fabric of the country. Is, in your point of view, an implosion imminent in India if such a policy continues?
As far as the situation in India is concerned, it is quite complex and challenging at the moment. And there's no doubt that the picture painted as rosy is not in reality, because India is always engaged and indulge herself in religion and regional crisis. We have seen in the past from the demonstrations, and we have seen how they discriminated people on the grounds of the religion, from Dalit community, from Christian community, and Muslims, how not to forget, from head cover and from going to schools and from employment and in daily lives. So for that, it is very important for the government policies to be strengthened and for the actions to take in relation to that. And political leaders, their role is very important of diversity, acceptance and tolerance. Very importantly, I would like to add here that it is essential for the government to uphold the principle of secularism and rule of law and human rights to prevail, which we believe that
we are not seeing those, are we?
Which India dramatically lacked.
And lacks, not only did it lack, but it currently lacks even more and more. You know, when you look at the democratic institutions in India, they are being hollowed out from the interior since 2014, slowly and steadily. We are seeing malfunctioning public institutions, persisting cleavages as far as religion is concerned, gender is concerned, caste and region is concerned. What's your comment on that? Can this be rectified in some way whatsoever if Modi continues to remain in power?
As far as democratic institutions are concerned, India ruined that from the judiciary to the media to different other democratic institutions. For the healthy democracy, it is very important to strengthen the basic principles of norms, values, integrity, dignity, honesty. During the BJP, we have seen that they lacked actually. So the BJP policy and strategy was always assertive in relation to create tensions from farmers to the religion and towards the opposition and all that, rather than to come for the dialogue and to settle the matter. I believe so that BJP never considered that.
You know, you talk of politics, there's a huge ideological difference between the BJP and the Congress. The Congress that ruled for a huge time, and then the Modi, through his machinations that worked in his favor, became the ruler of India and has been the Prime Minister since 2014. Now, of course, in the next couple of months or weeks, we are going to have the elections in India again, and a lot of people are saying that it's going to be Narendra Modi again. Whereas on the one hand, Congress has always been committed to regional pluralism, and the liberty of thought expression, belief, faith and worship to some extent. BJP wants to make India a Hindu state, a majoritarian state in which politics, public policy and even everyday life are cast in a Hindu idiom. Which side is the Indian public on? Is it favoring the BJP? Because when you see the voting results in the previous two elections, they have won by a huge margin.
Yes, there's no doubt that BJP won in the last two elections, but as far as the public is concerned, public is more inclined towards their basic necessities to fulfill. Public is more inclined towards fairness, justice and equity to prevail. Public demand is better India, elimination of poverty, better education system. I would like to say that the 8 years and 8 frauds by the BJP government and its failed democracy, I would like to add for your audience, Omar, here that the 8 frauds of India actually and of their the current, the last government. The first fraud was inflation. The second was throwing the youngest country into the darkness of unemployment and illiteracy. Like that mishandling of the Kashmir issue. How we can forget the
G20 summit that happened.
G20 summit. Besides that, during G20 summit, the way the current government of Modi fabricated in front of the world leaders by hiding their slums with the billboard, the international media covered, and I think that was that was full of shame actually. Again, the Rafale deal. I think the Indian Prime Minister lied to his people, and that deal in that era was rewrite by them. I think Indian public is more inclined towards fairness, equity and justice to prevail.
All right, Modi's believers and followers, and there are scores of them, claim that he has led India's national resurgence. Has he really? And if so, at what cost?
Okay. Modi and his cabinet always preferred extremism from all perspectives, and they are
the dominance of the Hindu religion and the Hinduism.
And they are the believer of Hindutva ideology, and that ideology is on extremism, fascism, and the Indian public dislike that because obviously it's a multicultural society, and where only one religion, according to the Prime Minister, is more favorable. So where the rest of the public will go at the end of the day. Another thing I would like to add here, from the farmer protest to the to other problems in India, the youth unemployment issue in the last 45 years, shut down to 60 lakh small and micro industries, slow down in business, reduce income in India. Finally, when the Modi government was exposed, rather than to answer to the Indian public, the Modi government actually played rule and divide and created problems. Their narrative of the BJP in the last elections were "Achhe din," good days. I don't think so. The Indian public experienced that "Achhe din," good days.
But this is what the public is being led to believe.
And the whole country is singing at the moment, "Koi luta de mere beete hue achhe din." Somebody please return by good days, old days gone. I would like to add here that the good days were where the petrol and the diesel prices were less, where the farmers were protected, and where the farmers were not at the to suicide, where the people were living with harmony in terms of their religion. But during Modi and BJP era, I think religious discrimination, social discrimination was at its peak.
Not only that, there's a whole building of the persona of Narendra Modi, who presents himself as the very embodiment of the party that he represents, that is the BJP, the government as well, the nation as well. Single-handedly, he's being made, he's making the people in India believe that he is the one who's behind it. It's with him everything matters, everything works in the right direction. Without him, it doesn't. Whether it be the construction of the world's largest cricket stadium named after Modi, whether it be the COVID-19 vaccination certificates with Modi's picture, the Supreme Court gushing that Modi is a visionary and a genius, and Modi's own proclamation that he has been sent by God to emancipate India's women. He has attempted to make governance and administration an instrument of personal will rather than a collaborative effort in which many institutions and individuals work together. Is this facade going to last long?
Well, this illusion of the Indian Prime Minister is unacceptable in any civilized and democratic societies. I have never seen the Western Prime Ministers like Prime Minister of Britain, from Theresa May to the Gordon Brown or Justin Trudeau in Canada, ever claim for their public their democracy is a real democracy than this artificial democracy of India, actually. So if whatever as proclaimed statements you mentioned about Modi, then why people are suffering every single day for their basic necessities? Even they're suffering, like they don't have the toilets as well. So the infrastructure like cricket stadiums and roads and motorways were built by Modi. Okay, fine, but what about the other basic necessities and rights of the people? So
no, what I'm also trying to understand is his authoritarianism, his authoritarian approach to governance that he brought from Gujarat to New Delhi. Do you feel really that for a country that calls itself or continues to call itself the world's largest democracy or pluralistic country, can afford such authoritarian approaches as far as governance is concerned? All the cabinet ministers, everybody has to have his tacit approval. Without it, nothing can pass. He has reduced the opposition as much as he could. The Supreme Court also works under his command, more or less. There are scores of examples as far as this is concerned. It is if he gives approval, everything is fine. If he doesn't, it doesn't comply with the state narrative.
So in other words, the Indian Prime Minister hijacked the whole country. from judiciary to the media to the general public, and that's why he faced retaliations from the farmers, retaliations from the Sikh community, retaliation within the Indian administered Kashmir actually after the abrogation of Article 370 and all. And
you remember how the Supreme Court also judged all the petitions that had gone against the Article 370, and that also a lot of people have been criticizing that it is because of maybe Modi's pressure or them bowing down to Modi that the decisions were taken as far as these petitions is concerned.
I agree with that point, and besides than that, very importantly, the BJP, their culture is threatening culture in India, and anybody who goes against BJP, it means that their life is in danger. And we have seen in the past the way during the protests, the people from the BJP comes out with guns and different other, they're full of arm actually in the capital, the streets of capital. So people are scared in India to come out and speak against Modi because BJP extremist ideology is into practice.
You know, you speak of free speech. India ranks 161 out of 180 countries as surveyed in the World Press Index, which surveys the levels of journalistic freedom. Free debate that was used to be once rampant in India is no longer free. In fact, universities have made selfie points for students where they can take the pictures with Modi's picture in the background so as to again elevate his status as this charismatic leader. These are so many examples that I can give again and again. In the context of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, a whole narrative is being built that the people are happy there, when in fact the exact opposite is happening, with people subjugated to torture, deaths, rapes, and so on and so forth. And also the the terrorism that has been going on, with India's implicit involvement in the US, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in Pakistan, transnational and regional terrorism. When you look at all of that, why is the world silent on that? Is the world, just letting India do whatever it wants, but on which expense? What is it that they're getting in return?
Omar, I don't think so. The world remained silent. After G20 summit, how you can forget the statement of Justin Trudeau, where he declared that the Indian government is involved, sending their spies and in killing off their nationals on their land. Again, USA condemned that as well, and Pakistan, when took the Kulbhushan case into the International Court of Justice, India was exposed, and the decision of the International Court of Justice, the sentence given to Kulbhushan Jadhav by the Pakistani military court is absolutely right, but they should have given them consular access. So I don't think so. World is silent. All the problems going on in India are debated from House of Commons to different parliaments in the world, from the European Parliament to the other parliaments in the world, in Canada as well. So,
but what I want to understand is, I know that Justin Trudeau has talked about it. I know Melanie Joly, the Canadian Foreign Minister, has talked about it. The US has talked about it, and we have talked about it when the killings occurred in Pakistan. But what is the action that has been taken by the West as far as these terrorist incidents is concerned? That is what I want to see.
All right. As far as Canada is concerned, Justin Trudeau, they sent their ambassador back, and besides than that, recently the statement from the United States that India we will hold India accountable. There's no doubt that Modi is popular at home and immune from criticism to a certain extent at international level. But when it comes to their citizens, the Western citizens or overseas Indians, obviously the narrative or the stance of Western world in terms of protection of the citizen is very important, rather than to favor any state or any prime minister because of their choices.
That is true. I would like just one phrase answer to this. The BJP under Modi promises to construct a Hindu Raj in which Hindus are going to reign supreme, erasing all the past as far as the Muslims rule and other rules are concerned, and of course the Hindutva or the Hindu nationalism that is prevalent in all the houses of the parliament as well. The BJP has 397 members in the two houses of the Indian parliament. Not one is a Muslim. Do you feel the strategy is going to work in these elections, these upcoming elections?
I don't think so for a longer term, because Indian public is angry at the moment, and again, the inclination is towards Rahul Gandhi and Congress, because they resonate with them in terms of human rights, in terms of their narrative. So I don't think so the strategy of BJP like that will stay longer. And if they will, if it will, then I strongly believe that that will be a huge destruction within the India.
All right, let's see what happens. The elections are in May. The BJP is hell-bent on pushing for Narendra Modi for a third stint in power, and of course all that is going on in India will go on if Modi comes back to power, and we will all see what India deals with internally or externally in the days and weeks to come. Thank you very much, Barrister Needa, Salam, foreign affairs expert, who have joined us. Let's come to our last two stories very quickly. The first concerns Iran, where parliamentary elections have been held today. The Interior Ministry has said 15,200 candidates have run for a 290-seat parliament, with a vetting body which is known as the Guardian Council that approves around 75% of initially registered hopefuls. Now, the unelected Guardian Council, which is made up of 6 clerics and 6 legal experts, generally within Khamenei's orbit, has the authority to scrutinize the laws and the election candidates as well. The ballots are mostly going to be counted manually, so the final result will not be announced for around 3 days, although partial results might be appearing sooner, and of course we'll be highlighting that as well. On the same day, that is today, Iranians have also voted about the Assembly of Experts, which appoints and can dismiss the supreme leader. This 88-member clerical body rarely intervenes directly in policy, but is expected to help choose the 84-year-old Khamenei's successor. Now, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has called voting a religious duty. He has accused the country's enemies, a term he normally uses for the US and Israel, of trying to create despair among Iranian voters. The commander of the country's elite revolutionary guards, Hossein Salami, has also said that each vote is like a missile launched in the enemy's heart. All the best for the results of these elections. Finally, a proposal to cool the earth down by blocking the sun has now finally been withdrawn. United Nations delegates yesterday withdrew a motion that called for more research into technologies that aimed to fight climate change by reflecting the sun's rays back into space amid concerns about the health risks as well as the environmental risks, and there could be many as far as that is concerned. Some who did oppose the draft resolution at the United Nations Environment Assembly were also worried that this use of the solar radiation modification, or the SRM, might let big polluters off the hook. Switzerland and Monaco had first tabled the resolution on examining the geoengineering technology in December, and it was discussed during this week's assembly in Nairobi, where it was decided that it is going to be withdrawn. One of the best known proposals for blocking the sun involved blasting sulfur dioxide, which is a coolant, into the higher reaches of the atmosphere. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of today's newsroom. This is the show on Friday, so we'll see you again in about 2 days' time on Monday. Have a great weekend, enjoy yourselves, but at the same time, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.